Welcome to the Fabric of America, the podcast that celebrates small businesses and the remarkable stories that weave our communities together. We're your hosts, Melissa Otto
and Matt Banover.
Matt is a fashion designer passionate about storytelling through style.
And Melissa is a seamstress on a mission to make sewing cool again and inspire the next generation. We sit down with small business owners, artisans, and dreamers to uncover the stories behind their brand, what inspires them, challenges them, and keeps them creating.
Because we believe that behind every idea, every design, every stitch, there's a story worth sharing. So grab a drink from your favorite local shop and join us as we weave together conversations about passion, perseverance, and the power of small business.
I feel like we are broadening our community and who we can have on here. And what better person to talk about community than, right?
Get off so hard out of the park right now.
I am on cloud nine. So we had Brian from Union Overall down in Norfolk, Virginia. Norfolk, Virginia.
How you say that one? Yeah.
I know. I was
like a Virginian. So
I know. I'm not going to attempt that, but Norfolk, right? Is that normal?
I'm gonna hate this.
Brian from Virginia came and joined us, but Brian's story was incredible. I mean, he has simultaneously found the perfect blend of tapping into the rich American history, American textiles, while also being a new business, essentially a new business. I mean, what, a year and 6 months?
I had no idea that that's how long he'd been in business.
Isn't that insane?
Shocked.
Yeah.
And just his shop looked amazing. And he is just so full of life and energy and inspiration and all the things. But the thing that I could tell immediately, and so you have had a rapport with him. He's completely a brand new human to me, so I don't really know him very well until this conversation. And the thing that really stuck out to me is that you can just tell immediately his grounding and belief in exactly what the identity is of his brand and himself. You know what I mean? He's an extension of the brand. The brand is an extension of him, and it's just so there's no question. There's no question there about what it is and how deep his belief is in Made in America and his appreciation for vintage as well. Oh God, what a high note to start off.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I thought that it was so, I always love those quotes I see on Instagram or whatever that are I love seeing somebody talk about something they're passionate about. Yeah. He truly, the way he talked about the vibe of his store, the way he talked about textiles, the way he talked about manufacturing, and also the way he talked about community and how we're all in this together. He truly, he must have name dropped 20 brands?
Yeah. We didn't have to ask who's your favorite local brand or American brand?
Yep, exactly.
It was
who awesome. They are, who the owners are, where they are, just all of it. You can tell he is just he is a weaver, 100% personality, everything. He just wants people to be a part of what he's a part of. And I think that that's so beautiful. So I hope
infectious in and of himself too. He pulls you in to that.
Oh yeah. He is a cool dude. You want to hang out with him on that couch and just see whatever they got on the screen and just talk about something, because he's got some interest, some something, yes, a story to tell. Speaking of stories to tell, we hope you enjoy our episode with Brian from Union Overall. Brian, so thank you so much for being here. This is amazing. You are coming to us live from where?
Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia. And that is, you're in your store right now?
I am.
That's pretty awesome. I appreciate the dedication.
Yeah. I practically live here at this point.
Yeah, I think every time I've ever seen an image of you, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm closed one day a week, and that one day is like left for me to catch up on everything that gets, forgotten about the other 6 days.
Yeah, I hear you. We all need those admin days.
Yeah.
I feel that so deeply.
Yeah. So give us the rundown for those who don't know what your company is and kind of like what the operation looks like.
Sure. So we started out as a store called Old Kings Road. That's what we started as. And when we decided to go full-fledged into actually manufacturing, we tried to go through the process of getting the trademark, and we ran into a bunch of issues for Old Kings Road because apparently Sears in the 70s had a brand called Kings Road. Okay. And someone keeps renewing that trademark, even though it's not an active brand, which put me into a weird scenario where I could get the name and the trademark, but it was going to cost me a lot of money because I had to hire a lawyer who it was going to take a lot of time for him to build a case that Kings Road's not actually making clothing and goods anymore, but Old Kings Road is. And when I realized how much that was going to be, I was like, okay, we're abandoning that. So we went into research mode, and we thought, Norfolk, Virginia, it was a ship town. It's a Navy town. There had to be brands that were manufacturing garments for those dock workers, for all the shipbuilders, for the, military and all those, workers that were here, from the 1800s until even now today. And we started finding that there were several, workwear operations here in town. There were also, tailors and things like that in downtown Norfolk back in the day. But we came across Union Overall, and we realized that their factory building is 3 blocks from our current location. And that just kind of felt right. It was like, okay, well, that's kind of serendipitous. We're 3 blocks from a garment manufacturer who used to make, jeans. I mean, back then they were called waist overalls, but they were making jeans, chore coats, overalls, all that sort of stuff 3 blocks from where we are. They were also milling their own denim in there. So they had a cut and sew floor and, a mill where they were manufacturing the denim in-house. And they were doing denim and wool and, other natural fibers, cotton. So when we found that, we were like, okay, let's dive into this brand and figure out, when were they here? When did they disappear? And we found out that, they were founded in 1901, and we couldn't find anything else after the early 1920s. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of manufacturing, they just kind of, I guess died out at some point. So we decided to relaunch Union Overall and give it a whirl. There were other successful examples of it happening with like Black Bear brand in Seattle, a Stronghold in LA. So we thought we would give that a whirl and relaunch this brand. And we got lucky enough to actually find an original Union Overall piece, which is this right here behind me on this mannequin. We had a gentleman who claimed his great grandfather worked for Union Overall back in the teens, and he had 2 pieces. So we were able to get those. And we crafted a pattern or drafted a pattern off of this piece and plan on redoing this legacy piece for Union Overall and re-releasing it. We've had a lot of people already wanting to put in pre-orders, but I'm not into doing pre-orders. I'd rather make the things, do small batch and then have people come and check it out. So,
yeah.
That's
wow. What?
I'm freaking out over here because this little flannel, my employee went to like a swap closet that we have here in town, and she snagged it. She was like, "Here, this is an old men's thing. I think you'd like it." And I actually like share it with my husband. I'm not kidding you. I did not know this story. It is Kings Road brand.
See?
I'm like
What?
absolutely losing my mind. And it says underneath it, a division of the Sears Roebuck Company. I'm
Yeah.
dying.
No.
Yeah.
All
I mean, they did some cool stuff.
were meant to connect us today.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's wild.
That's
Isn't that
funny.
That's so cool.
There you go.
Yeah. So I guess your outfit is telling you the best story today.
Quite literally.
Yeah. Now, Brian, do you have a background in tailoring and manufacturing? Like, how did you get into all that?
No, I don't have a background in that, oddly enough. I had always wanted to have my own clothing brand. I've always been very particular about the things that I wear. And the older I got, the more particular I got about it. And like, for example, I really won't wear anything but natural fiber clothing. Like I cannot do like even down to like my beanies. They have to be wool or cotton. It cannot be acrylic. I can't do it. But my love for just history, my love for, really cool garments, really cool. I nerd out on textiles. Like I'm all about finding those like really weird textiles. Like I've got wool in the back that I don't even know how it was manufactured, but it is so just unique that I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do with. But I worked in, advertising agencies and creative agencies out in Seattle. I worked in-house with brands like Starbucks in their social media division. And then, Microsoft. I worked at stint at Amazon corporate, and I just got burnt out. I got burnt out, and I kept realizing that I was putting my dreams on hold to, bring in a paycheck. And if I kept doing that, I would never actually step out and do the thing that I really wanted to do, which is this. So I just kind of decided, you know what, I'm done working in tech. I'm done with that. I'm gonna do this. So
Yeah.
And
here I
in
am.
Virginia. Why Virginia of all places?
That's an interesting story in and of itself. I mean, we moved back from Seattle and we were only supposed to be here for 3 months. Like I own a house here. It was my childhood home. I grew up here, and when I left, I was like, I'm never coming back. Like I'm never going back there.
That feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. So having the house here, we had to come back and we were going to fix it up and sell it or turn it into a rental. Well, that was like at the tail end of the pandemic. So we had high hopes, but we ended up getting here. We couldn't get supplies. We couldn't get, help. So 3 months turned into, okay, I guess we're staying here for a while. And I had been away for so long. Coming back, it was a very kind of a different place. Like when I left here, it was just, it's still a lot of shopping centers and just suburbia, but there was like this thing happening in Norfolk and in certain spots in Virginia Beach where it was like, makers, there were bag makers, there were, artists, there was a kind of a thriving music scene, the restaurant scene was taking off. So we just decided, you know what, let's do it here. Let's give it a shot because we're like the only one that's, manufacturing garments within a 150-mile radius of here. I think the next closest would be Richmond, Virginia, which there's Shaco Atelier up there and Sea Blues and Clawson Studios, but we're kind of the only one doing garments here. There are really good bag makers here, like North End Bag Co. in Virginia Beach makes some really amazing bags. And then there's a guy here in Norfolk called Werther Leather Goods, and he makes really phenomenal, leather bags and canvas bags. But there's bag makers, there was no garment manufacturers. So
Yeah, big difference.
That's
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Melissa, it kind of reminds me of your story of like wanting to, have your own line. And then kind of it seems like, you went a different way. You went back down to like the basics,
Yep.
thread and needle.
Yep. That's it. That's it. Well, it's funny too, because I think very similarly, like I didn't want to land back home. I thought I'm going to blow this town and I'm never looking back. And for me, the closest metropolitan area is New York City. And so that was kind of I went to FIT, I did all the things and I had that formal education, but I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And it was that like slow progression of like, well, I don't really want to live in the city, and like some suburban-ish area is nice, but then I grew up in a very rural area and I just wanted it was really about my kids, just trying to get closer to my parents at the time.
Yeah.
And there was something kind of like how you noted, there was like a little, I'm not in my exact hometown, I'm like the next town over, but there's something kind of brewing and it feels really good to be on the younger end of things, starting a business, like planting roots and just seeing where it takes you.
Yeah. Completely agree. I hope that this isn't just isolated things that are happening, that it's part of a bigger movement, because I really strongly believe that like we need to have makers and artists and we need textile mills here in the US that are making really cool textiles, and it's really hard. It's hard to find people who know how to do it,
Mhm.
and B, it's hard because there's really no one left.
Yeah.
Like I think
Yeah.
it kind of circles back to there's just that we've lost that legacy knowledge with the gutting of small business, and more specifically the textile and garment manufacturing industry in the US.
Yeah. Our conversation with Jacob was from American Woolen was so just eye-opening into how we have been just chewed to the bone
Yeah.
of what's left. And I mean, he said, there's 4 woolen textile mills left. And there's other textile mills that are doing like bed sheets and stuff. But in terms of like garments, it's like there's nothing out there. And what I found so interesting when I was really deciding to go down this path of made in America. My original business plan for Bard's was a store on the Gold Coast of Connecticut, and it was going to focus on American made goods, but it wasn't going to be all of it. It was definitely going to be the majority. But I was like, got to make some money. So I'll have some stuff from some other places. And I justified it. But then when it came down to it, I was like, hell no, like I got to do this.
Yeah.
And I found it so fascinating that the dominant, when you look up clothing made in America, it's like workwear, it's chore coats, it's heavy denim. It wasn't tailored clothing, which is what I had in mind because I wanted to be a custom clothier. So then this whole world like shifted on me of, well, what does American clothing mean? What does American textiles mean? And like, I've just been on that journey ever since. And now, I mean, I've been dating a girl for about 6 weeks, and I think she's seen me in a suit twice. So like the majority of what I wear is like denim shirts, it's jackets. I'm like, I really want to be a part of this pre-existing history.
Yeah.
And kind of get back to like, this is what we do. This is what our history is, that American worker. And I think it's cool that we're always like, America built this, this, and this. And the fashion represents it, because when you look at American fashion, it's workwear.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting.
And it's kind of always been for since really, I mean, let's give credit where credit's due. Levi's with the what they called waist overalls then, but we call jeans now. I mean, name another piece other than maybe a men's suit that has stood the test of time like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, did you read Making It in America, the Rachel Slade book?
I listened to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I should probably go back and listen to it again because I devoured reading it, but I'd love to listen to it again. But her whole thing was like, what's more iconic than a hoodie? Like America, like
Yeah.
a hoodie. And yet it is almost impossible to find an American made hoodie.
Right.
Like it's truly shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, sorry, Melissa, you got a question?
I was going to say, I think one of the things that you're kind of hitting on the nose, Brian, is that we got away from making. And part of that was like, as we're a developing nation and things are kind of carrying on and everyone's got this American dream and we're going to go get college educated now. And that's what it's about. And it was less about, like trade jobs or craftsmanship, things like that became frowned upon.
Mhm.
It became, you're less than if you're working with your hands. You've got a ceiling on your career. You've got this, like a lot of stigma has happened. And I still don't think we've fully broken that. But I think that artisanal level that so many people are bringing back to true craftsmanship and goods of any kind is going to be that catalyst for people to go, oh no, like this is high class. Like this is what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my parents' generation, my parents were born in the 1940s. And, when my dad was still alive, like when I was finishing high school, he was like, he basically was like, come hell or high water, you will never work in an industrial job because he was a union worker. He worked for Ford Motor Company. So Ford had a plant here in Norfolk and, it was a great job and he made really good money for a blue collar worker, but he had his eyes set on, you're going to go to college and you're going to do this. And I did. And I ended up getting my master's degree, but it was never a thing of like, do you want to work with your hands? It was like, he was like, hell no, you're going to use your brain. So I think that there was always an allure to working with my hands. So I started out like, working on the cars that I would buy and learning. And I realized really quickly I liked working with my hands. So, it's just, I think a lot of times it's a cultural or a generational thing. And I think that the pendulum is, you're right, it's the pendulum swinging back the other way. I think what really makes me sad is there's so many times like I'll drive through, I've got family in the western part of Virginia and they live in the mountains, and I'll drive through these old towns and I can see what it was. Like at one point it was a thriving town with, a factory and workers and jobs and restaurants and old theaters and everything like that. And now it's like just a shell of its former self. And whenever I drive through those towns, I look at it and I'm like, ooh, that building would be great to be turned back into a factory.
Right?
Like,
Industrial spaces.
Yeah.
So
And the cost of real estate is so cheap in those towns that it's like but then you run into the problem of who would work there if you took a gamble and opened a factory. Yeah. You'd have to bring people from elsewhere, and then that kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, I was just having that conversation yesterday with a friend of mine. I mean, Connecticut is very similar in that regard. Like you drive around and it's all just those old mill buildings. And it's like, it's gotten to the point where it's a buzzword. People don't even associate it with like fabric and like textiles and workers. It's just an old mill building. And what do? You turn it into an apartment complex.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing. But I was talking
about in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of the old mill buildings have been turned into apartments or lofts and things like that.
Yeah, and the town that I used to live in was Norwich, Connecticut. I lived there last year. Norwich used to be one of the biggest ports in New England. I mean, it's where Benedict Arnold is from. It was huge, and like as America dove deeper and deeper. Well, like as Connecticut started to expand, you started to have more ports, but Norwich is still built on this gigantic kind of idea of being a massive port city. And now it's like it doesn't exist at all.
Yeah.
And so Norwich is gigantic. You can't get enough people there to make that town vibrant because there's so much land there. Nobody's going to open a giant factory there. And you've only got like 2 employees at a Cricket Wireless or, like some, like, it's like, it's almost like a shoe that's too big for a foot to fit in. It's like these towns are just like, they can't even support themselves because they used to have like the giant factories that everybody would work in. And like, it's wild to see that history is like right there in front of us. You drive by those empty buildings or apartment complexes and you're like, holy shit, that used to just straight up be where everybody went and worked with their hands and then went right back to like their house down the road.
I would love to see it get back to that. I just don't know how we get there. I mean, I guess it takes folks like Jacob with American Woolen, like being willing to struggle and fight the good fight to get there. I mean, we do small batch manufacturing. I can't even imagine what it's like having to figure out how to mill textiles, but that's what we need. But how do we get there?
Yeah, no, I mean, Melissa had a great question on that episode about like, okay, you have a mill, that's great. How do you find people to work there? Who even knows that skill? Like now you can apply to Amazon as a 12-year-old because you've been on a computer your whole life. But like, how do you I wouldn't even know where the on switch is on like a dyeing machine. It's like, it's not inherent in our society at all. So that's like a huge problem that he said he was facing, right, Melissa?
Yeah, but he also said that they had enough people there that were able to teach. Like people still had some skill set to be able to pass on. So,
which is so cool. What, Brian, I am interested because like your Instagram is so wild, and I want to get into kind of what the online community has been, but just for a little bit more knowledge about like your business, like what are the things that you make small batch? And how much are you making in-house? How much are you outsourcing? Like, what does that look? And where can people find these things?
So you can find them in our shop. Sometimes we put them online if we have enough, but sometimes the demand is high enough in the local market that we sell out of what we make. In-house, I mean, we're making jackets, outerwear, bags. We're trying to be a zero waste company. So a lot of the fabric that we use for like our duffel bags, for example, the scraps will turn into like literally, coin pouches or dot bags. Like this is one of the wallets, coin pouches that this was a scrap piece of fabric. So it's like the fabric is so good. Why would we just toss it? There's no point in tossing it, but we also keep the scraps too that are like too small to make something out of. And we'll offer it to people. Like people will come in and be like, hey, I'm trying to repair this pair of jeans I have. Do you have any scrap fabric? And we just give it away. Like we're all about that, but pretty much we're making everything in house. Like our t-shirts come from LA. Like we get our t-shirts from LA. But the cotton is grown in the US, it's spun in the US, it's sewn in the US. And then our printer is a company here in Norfolk called Prince Inc. You should look them up. They're a really cool company. And they do our printing. So we try to keep everything as close to home as possible. I mean, it's like to do something like t-shirts, you need an industrial level, operation to make t-shirts worth it. Otherwise you're selling $200 t-shirt, with the amount of time and effort it goes into making something. It's just not feasible to compete with a $50 t-shirt. If you've got to charge someone $100 or $150 for a t-shirt, I just feel slimy about that. But that's the reality, right? The reality is it takes time, and time is money. So if you have to pay someone to make something and it's taking them a lot of time, then that adds to the end cost of the product. And then we run into the problem of the textile itself. Like some of the textiles we use are $40 and $50 a yard, and it takes 3 to 4 yards to make a jacket. So right there, let's say it's $50 a yard. Right there, just the fabric alone is $200. That's not including the finishings, the buttons, the thread, anything like that, the labels. Like people
paying yourself.
Yeah, people have been so misled by the fast fashion industry that they don't value clothing. They look at it as it's a commodity, right? It's like something that I can grab, I can wear 3 times and then toss out and grab something else cheap. But cheap also costs. There's a cost to cheap. And I think that it's about we try to retrain people to understand, like, somebody came in and it's like, why is this bag, $395? I'm like, well, the bag's $395 because it took 9 hours to make.
Yeah.
The fixings alone on the bag are $100. It took a human 9 hours to hand make that bag. That's why it's $400. And actually that's pretty cheap for 9 hours worth of that's what we're up against as makers. We're up against everybody thinking I should be able to go get a pair of jeans for $40. I should be able to go get a t-shirt for $15. I should be able to get a pair of shoes for, it's funny. People are more willing to pay high dollar for shoes than they are a garment that people see first thing, right? Like that jacket you're wearing. That's what people notice. They don't notice your shoes. But
I know. Yeah, I used to work at a boutique store, and it was so frustrating. The customer who fought me tooth and nail about an $800 suit, but was walking around in an $8,000 watch.
Right.
And it was like, bro, like, you get it. Like, what are we talking about here?
I think that's probably a good example of an industry who has figured out a way to balance cheap with bespoke is the watch industry, right? Like it. I mean, I own a Rolex watch. I paid a lot of money for it, and it was very hard to make that first purchase, right? But you know what? I love that watch. I don't own any other watches. I'll have that watch till the day I die. Yeah. And that's what made it worth the price that I paid for it. And I think it's a matter of maybe we can learn something from the watch industry and how they do that. Because I mean, you can walk into Walmart and buy a $5 watch, same as you can walk into a fast fashion store and buy cheap clothing. Yeah. But I think that again, with the pendulum swinging, I think it is swinging somewhat back in that craftsman direction, because there are a lot of people who are really interested in like small batch and, quality goods. I get a lot of people who come in here asking about, salvage denim jeans, like explain it to me. Tell me about it. What is it? And I explain, it's made on a shuttle loom. It's a tighter weave. It's a better product. It has a finished edge, and just giving them the explanation, and that they get intrigued, and I think maybe go off and do their own research and learn, Yeah.
It's nice to see people have a genuine curiosity now too about where their stuff comes from, who's making it. And I think everybody is so it's still like intrigued by knowledge, right? Like people, especially in the age of the internet, everybody likes to do like a deep dive down the rabbit hole of whatever, A, B, C, or D.
Yeah.
Finding something that is interesting to them, like a salvage denim or like where the watch parts come from or whatever. People like to go down those little tunnels and find these nuggets of information. And to exactly what you do, Matt, is it then becomes a story, right? So it's not just any pair of jeans. This is my selvage denim. And I talked to Brian about it. And then I learned and then I went down a rabbit hole and I found these on the internet and whatever. So it becomes like something more special. We talk all the time about people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. There's like that inspiration, that aspiration behind everything that we're putting into our respective businesses. And that's where the buy-in comes from people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the older I get, the more I realize everything that matters is about community, some sort of community, some sort of tribe that you can belong to.
Say that.
What's that?
Did Matt pay you to say that?
Oh, no. Is that your thing? That's awesome. It is. I mean, right? Like, you got the guys who drive Land Rovers and they all like geek out on Land Rovers. You got guys who drive Jeeps and they all, geek out on Jeeps. And you've got the denim heads and you've got the workwear people. And there's like crossover here and there. But, like if you're standing in public and you're wearing a pair of selvage denim jeans and you look down at the guy next to you or the girl next to you and she or he's wearing selvage denim, you kind of have that connection. Like this person knows what they're wearing.
It's like
they
you're
know what they have on.
in a secret club.
Yeah.
How much is that related to like where we are as a society? I'm gonna go like deep on this question. Like we talk about like people don't have like a third space anymore. Like they go to work or home, whatever. Like they don't have built-in communities as much as we used to, as much as our parents' generation used to. So I personally feel like we're just like dying to connect with people as much as maybe sometimes people don't want to admit it and they like to be isolated or they like their own space or they get anxious in a crowd, whatever. But I think there's just like something humanly ingrained in us that we've been missing in these last, 20 years, maybe.
I agree. I mean, that's why, like, if I could turn the camera around, you would see I've got like I'm sitting on a Chesterfield sofa in the shop, right? And I've got this old mining cart as my coffee table. And then I have another Chesterfield like love seat and then a Chesterfield chair sitting over here. And the whole idea was I wanted a place for people to come and feel comfortable hanging out. And I do have that. Like I have quite a few people who will come in here and just hang out, like, and we'll talk. Matter of fact, there was like 4 of us in here talking like a week and a half ago. And we were talking about like, it was all over the map. It was from like clothing to music to aliens to like whatever. It was just kind of going all over the place. And like when we finished talking, it was just kind of like this guy Josh that I know, he stood up, he was like, well, we just concluded a podcast without recording it. And it's true. I mean, but that's what I wanted here. And that's why, like, with our shop, like you were talking about, Matthew, like you wanted to open a shop and you wanted it to all be American. And then you were like, well, maybe I'll have some other stuff in there. That's like with us. When I envisioned opening the shop, I wanted the physical manifestation of the brand to come to life, because I think like when people walk in and they can actually see something, it's one thing to see it online. It's another to like actually walk into a space and be like, whoa, like this could be Ralph Lauren's like, cigar room, they feel a different connection to the brand. And we started out wanting to sell other American brands or like really cool British brands in our shop, like, maybe Barber or, Filson, all of these different brands. And then I started going down the rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, well, 99% of Filson stuff is no longer made in America. It's made in Indonesia or China. And then I start looking at like, well, at least Barber still makes most of their stuff in England, but there was just like this thing. And I was reaching out to these brands like Pendleton and I'm like, I'd like to carry your, some of your stuff. And then I find out, okay, the wool's made in Oregon, but the clothing and the stuff is, it's shipped off to China and then they make it in China and send it back. And I'm like, what is it really that much cheaper to do that? Like, that's crazy to me. So we decided, okay, once we hit that roadblock, it was like, there were 2 roadblocks. One, most of the stuff wasn't actually made in the US by these brands. So I was like, okay, so that kind of takes a lot of it off the table. The second part was the minimum amount to buy in to sell some of these brands was astronomical. And I'm like, how could a small business ever do that? Like, I think Filson was like $75,000 a year minimum to be able to carry their stuff. Like, they're just cramming stuff down your throat, like and making you have to sell their stuff. And I was like, I'm not down with that. I'm not okay with that. And so we decided to go in a different direction and sell vintage. So we curate vintage in the shop. So we might be a lot like a brand like Mr. Freedom in LA, where he's got this really cool shop and, it's a lot of vintage, but he also, designs and makes his own clothing and sells it in the shop. So I think that's kind of what we are. And it also makes me feel better to know that I'm not just adding more stuff to the world, right? Like, I'm small batch. So we make small batches of stuff, and it's not to drive a scarcity model. It's because we only have 100 yards of this one type of fabric. Okay. So we're going to make whatever we can out of that 100 yards. And that's what it ends up being. And then the vintage allows us to, repurpose things. Like, it's just stuff that people would, typically throw away or, give to a thrift store. I'll buy it from them. I'm like, don't take it to the thrift store, bring it to me. I'll buy it from you. You're giving it to the thrift store, they're just gonna take it and for free and upcharge on it. I'll actually pay you for it, and it allows me to curate some really unique pieces in the shop. So
Yeah.
So Brian,
I wanted to
go ahead, Beth.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you know, like, how do you go about designing? Like, do you just like, something is inspiring me today, so I'm just going to come up with a design? Or is it fabric driven? Is it a mixture? And how do you decide? Do you just max out what you've got for fabric? Do you decide quantities differently? How does that all work for you?
I think it's more or less just like, I have ideas and I'll sketch ideas out, and then, business partners will do the same thing. It's for it's really hard. Like, I'll see like an old picture of, somebody in some sort of cool jacket. I'm really into outerwear, so I love jackets. Like, I have way too many jackets, and I just I don't know. I'll see an old picture and I'll think about, like, how could I make that a little bit differently, so not as to copy what they have. Like, I sketched out this, for example, I saw this, gi, like a Japanese, like, um, kendo gi. And I was like, man, that would look really cool as a jacket. So I like sketched it out, and then, um, you know, then it's goes to, I'm kind of like all over the place here with this, but it's like, I just nerd out on textiles. So like, I see textile that I like, I'll buy it. And I'm like, okay, we can figure out what to do with this.
It's funny. I'm starting to do that more. Like, you go into all these traditional uh, menswear shops, for suiting, and they've got all the yards of fabric. And I was always like, all right, that's cool. I get it. But I think that it never appealed to me until now that I'm getting more into lifestyle wear and workwear that I want it. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what a wool suit should feel like. But
Mhm.
imagine something like a denim, holding it and being like, wearing this. Like, that gives you a different feel to it.
Mhm.
But I wanted to talk to you about community and what you've found online, because I mean, the only reason that this conversation is happening is because of an online community. Like,
Right.
you and I found each other and we just DM'd back and forth. But you've been open for just over a year, right?
Yeah, in our current location, we had a small shop in another city here when we were Old Kings Road for like 6 months, and then I shut that down and moved
Yeah.
because it was not the right location. Like
Yeah.
it was one of those things like going into business for yourself and being like, oh, this place looks cool. And then realizing real quickly that that was not the right spot. So
Yeah, and you have going on 11,000 followers right now on Instagram. You
yeah,
are like, I see the collabs, I see it all. I mean, I have conversations with people like Jake, who runs Southland Heritage, the website.
right.
And he's always like, Brian's awesome, this and that. You're doing collabs with local musicians, but then there was that hurricane that hit, and you and Opie Shoes were doing all this stuff. So, like, can you talk about what that community has really looked like and been, how it's been important to your business?
Absolutely. I don't look at anybody as a competitor. Like my competitor is Sheen. My competitor is Old Navy. Like I'm competing for mind share from those people. When I see brands like, you know, Black Bear brand, Stronghold, Raleigh Denim, brands like that, I don't look at them as competitors. I look at them as like we're in this fight together, right? And the Opie Way thing, that was not mine by any stretch of the imagination. Like that was something that Ship John and Jake at Southland and a Go Fast Campers in Montana, they put it together.
Can you kind of define what that was?
Yeah, so Opie Way, they're a tennis shoe manufacturer here in the U.S. And God, I mean, just think about like how hard it is for us manufacturing garments. I can't even imagine what it's like trying to manufacture tennis shoes in the United States. Like that's just absolutely mind blowing to me. But they were hurt. Their factory was destroyed by that hurricane in Carolina. Like they were in Asheville, North Carolina. Their entire factory was just absolutely destroyed. All of their shoes, all of their, patterns, all of their machines, everything was destroyed. And, when you're a small business and you're kind of footing the bill yourself, that's a huge loss. Like,
Fuck yeah.
and Ship John, Jake, Go Fast Campers, they kind of decided let's put together something and do a raffle where all of these American brands like pool their resources to help raise money for Opie Way so that they can dig themselves out of the trenches and not lose another, brand. I mean, I think they're the only tennis shoe manufacturer, maybe one of the only tennis shoe manufacturers in the United States. So all of these brands came together and said, okay, well, we'll make this, we'll donate this, we'll give this. And, you donated a money to the Opie Ways GoFundMe, and that entered you into the raffle to win something. And like a guy in, I think, Ohio won our bag and he didn't even know who we were, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I send him the bag and I threw a couple of other goodies into the bag with it, like maybe like a dot bag and a wallet and like stuff like that. And I sent it off, and then like 3 weeks, 4 weeks went by. I didn't hear anything. I'm like, oh shit, I hope this guy didn't hate what he got. And then all of a sudden I get this message that was like, hey, I just wanted to say, like, this is like one of the best bags I've ever received. And I will be very proud to travel with this bag and use it when I'm out hunting and all of this sort of stuff, which made me very happy. So I was very happy to hear that. But I think all in all these brands, donated something, and a lot of money was raised for Opie Way. And I think they're well on their way to recovery.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
Here.
And that's the kind of community it is, right?
Yeah.
Like Jake at Southland Heritage, like I'll back up. At one point, my wife and I were talking about how it would be cool to have like a think tank of all of these American manufacturers. Didn't matter what you manufactured, garments, shoes, you're a tailor, but all of these people that could knowledge share. And then Jake mentioned something about doing that. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like we had talked about doing this like think tank on this. And So I think Jake is off running with that and trying to get something together where there's like this online community for people like us and you guys, and where we can just knowledge share, because in this industry, there's so much that is hidden and locked up and hard to decipher. It's like, where do I get labels?
Yeah.
Tags for my, how do I get tags made in America?
Yeah.
Who's the button manufacturer here in the US? Like, where can I get zippers?
You were talking about like how the t-shirts and getting them from LA and this and that and figuring out the sources. And I was literally like, we tried to get Pride t-shirts and wound up finding a local person to do it. But getting to that point where we were like, where are the t-shirts coming from? Who's printing them? I was like, how can it be this hard? It was so difficult. So while you're saying all this stuff, I'm like, how did he do it?
It was a lot of just research. Like I went to the far reaches of the internet looking and trying to learn. And Evan, who is a part owner of Hudson Hill down in Greensboro, but he also owns Proximity Denim Manufacturing in Greensboro. He was like a huge resource for me. I couldn't afford to buy his denim at the time, but we got in this conversation back and forth, and he started just sharing information with me. He's like, if you need labels, go here. If you need buttons, go here. If you need zippers, go here. Which was just, and he hooked me up with like a rep at YKK. He hooked me up with people at Mount Vernon Mills down in Georgia for denim or canvas needs. And it was just really nice to not have to jump through hoops. I guess I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get to that point, but actually finding somebody who was willing to be kind of an open book and share what they could with me was really helpful. And I think that, like that, and I don't know if you all have seen the Crafted with Pride book that came out, but we were asked to, if we wanted to be in that, and we were like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that book's great because it has, cut and sew factories in there. It has all sorts of stuff that not only helps like people who are interested in buying American made clothing, but it also helps like manufacturers figure out, like, if I can't make, like, if it gets to a point where I need to make 100, short coats or pairs of jeans, and I can't do that in house because there's 3 people here, who can I go to help with this? And it had that list in there of like these cut and sew operations. So, but it took a lot of research to just start to decipher that. And I don't want anybody who is interested in doing this to have to face those kinds of challenges. Like, we're not here to haze each other at this point. Yeah. Like, we need to be here to help each other.
Absolutely. Like, just lifting people up, just like here's the knowledge, because I don't think that there is, at least in the Made in America world, I don't think there's a lot of gatekeeping. I think it's a lot of, I just don't even know where to start. I don't even know who to ask, because there's gatekeeping with, made overseas. I don't want you to know who I use. I don't want you to know, which is fine because there's 10 billion other ones you can look for. But Made in America, you're like, I don't even know what to Google.
Yeah. You're right. But I did run into gatekeeping here with the
there's a few bad apples out there, but for the most part, it's like, when I was starting, trying to find shirts, it was like, I don't even know shirt manufacturer. Like I was getting screen printers in the mall, like kiosk, it was like, you don't even know. One of the manufacturers I used in Brooklyn, it got to the point where I just typed in like clothing manufacturer into Google Earth and was just dragging the map and just calling the little dots. I must have called, no lie, 300 people, and 299 of them were like screen printers or just a clothing store that just had popped up. And it was insane. But I did have an idea that I thought was really cool. just for you, and since you've got this online community, Melissa and I were just recently talking about community and how Instagram has those like subscriptions.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, like, it might be cool. I was thinking, like, I would do this if you had a subscription service, and that way you put those products that are small batch on there, and like the people that really were literally bought into your community could then see those products that you're only selling in the store. Because like
Right.
I'm never gonna be in Norfolk, Virginia. I mean, I will to meet you one day, but I still want to see that stuff, and I would pay $5, $10 a month. And then like, here it's posted, there it is. So just an idea. I'll expect dividends on it. Yeah.
I would love to get there,
Yeah.
but like honestly, right now I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have the time to even sit down and think about how that might work. And then, I mean, I think we all suffer from imposter syndrome at some point in our journey, right? Like, I would sit there and think, why would someone want to pay me $5 to learn about something I'm making? You
And
know?
I'm over here like, shut up and take my money. Like, so there's the thing, but like on that note, I think what we were talking about earlier, like you could show people that you got inspired and drew an image about here's this coat, like stuff like that. The internet now is at a point where it is finally cool to have a niche. There's accounts with millions of followers about mowing lawns.
I know. Sometimes I'm like, is this real? Like,
Yeah.
is it reality?
It's like people are very hungry for that kind of like slowing it down. But I think we're nearing the end of our conversation, which is wild that an hour went by.
Oh, man, it has been an hour. Wow.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask you just kind of like, what is your, I guess, what's your, I have so many questions, of course, now at the end, but like, I guess, what is the part that you're proudest of what you've built, and what are you most hopeful for in the future?
I would say most proud is just actually doing it, like actually opening a store, actually having, a production floor in the back of a store. Like that was a distant dream 3 years ago, and here it is a reality. So it's amazing. A look to the future, man, I would really love to, I, when I initially started, I thought I wanted to have multiple locations like around the country where each store had its own production space, where it was a physical representation of the brand, but also of the place that it is. So, like if I opened it in, say, Newport, Rhode Island, we would lean more into sailcloth and, that preppy New England vibe, but still keep it real to the brand. We opened in, Portland, Oregon, we would lean more into the flannel and all of that. I don't know if I want to do that now, but I did. That was kind of a vision. So I don't know. I'm really just focused on making some really cool, high quality pieces that I know a small select group of people are going to want.
And
So
pay $5 a month to be a part of seeing those.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think if you ever do get to that point of like opening different locations, Melissa would jump at the idea.
I'm literally here like, oh, I could be like a manager. And
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, Melissa would like jump at having the Connecticut location, having people sewing and making stuff and moving the needle toward that and having that
dream.
identity.
A dream.
All right. Well, when that dream comes true, you've got two investors here. Melissa, any last thoughts?
No, you took my question. My question was about hopes for the future. So I appreciate
Awesome.
you for me.
Well, Brian, this has been amazing. You and I have been friends on Instagram for, just under a year now. We've been very supportive of each other. I couldn't think of like a better person to be on this call. I feel like so inspired right now. I just want to go sell some American goods to a community right now. We're gonna link all of your socials on here, but shout out your Instagram, shout out your website, but we'll link it also in the bio.
Yeah, our Instagram is at Union Overall Co. and our website is unionoverall.com. We cross post to Facebook, but I'm going to be honest, I'm not very active on Facebook.
None of us.
Instagram allows me to like artistically express the brand. Facebook does not.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, Brian, thank you so much for everything. This was amazing.
And thank you for giving me a newfound appreciation for my shirt.
Yeah, Kings Road.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, Brian, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you for conversating. Everybody go follow and we'll look out for that, whatever drops you've got. So thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.